I'm Elizabeth Kurlikowski, and I'm the president of Friends of Poetry. Many, if not all of our board members are here tonight. We work on a skeleton crew of 9 people, pretty much. We've learned a lot in the past year about ourselves, about Zoom, about community. Poetry is a community open to everyone, and I really like that about us. Right now, our board is working on the community poem for the Kalamazoo Poetry Festival. We're working on our kids contest, which ends in like a week. And now we're doing what I think is our 6th Celery City reading. If I was a numbers person, I would know how many years we've done this, but I do not. So I think it's 6. Hi, Margaret. So this whole series, the Celery City series, began with a question from Penny Rose, who is the graphic design professor at Kellogg Community College, where I worked, where Simon, do you still work there? Where Simon works. And she said, did I have a short manuscript that her students could make into a book just as practice? And they did it. It turned out great. And so we thought, well, why not? You know, if you want to do this every year, we can definitely provide manuscripts for you. So that's how the Celery City series got started. And my one perk for having worked there is I get really cheap printing rates. So it's worked out so perfectly for our organization. People are getting books, they're getting work. Yeah, it's a good thing. So the books are all designed by students at Kellogg, and the winners have, I mean, a fair amount of say in what the magazine looks or what the booklet looks like by the end, because they get to see drafts of it and stuff. So I hope they're happy. Sometimes people aren't happy, but I don't care anymore. Let's see, you should be able to buy them from the authors. You can buy them from me at the House of Pain here, or I'm going to take some downtown Kalamazoo to Dean at Michigan News, and you'll be able to buy them there also. So that's what we're doing tonight, and we're happy to introduce our authors. First, from Kellogg Community College. Playing guard, no, I don't know what he is. Simon Thalmann is a writer and photographer from Kalamazoo. His work has appeared in many publications in print and online. He's a former news editor and reporter. This really got me. Thalmann has written thousands of articles for news organizations around the country. Oh my God, that sounds so daunting. Congratulations, Simon. He holds a bachelor's degree in English from Western and a master's in marketing from Eastern. And he has worked forthcoming in a bunch of places and has published a bunch of stuff. And Pretty Haunted Meadow is the latest. Take it away, Simon.
Right, thank you. It's awesome. Yeah, so this is the book. If you haven't seen it, the designer did an awesome job. It has a little bit of like an Edward Gorey feel, which is kind of cool. So this manuscript is something I'm especially proud of. All the things that get published, I like that it's this. I had the manuscript in draft form sitting on a table in one of our early apartments a long time ago, and I was probably going to do nothing with it, and my brother-in-law and my sister came over, and he was just kind of reading it as we were sitting in the kitchen. And as they left, I just overheard him talking to my sister. Oh, they're so weird, but you can't stop reading. Like, he was saying really nice things about them, which is like, nobody ever like talks about your work if they even read it at all. So I was like, maybe I should save that. So I did, and over the years I added to it and did more. And so I'm really excited about this. So I dedicated this to Russell Edson, and that's a poet. He's a prose poet. He died in like 2014. Some of you may be familiar with him, some maybe not. So I was just going to read a poem of his that inspired all this. So when I was in college at Western 15 years ago, Michelle Bonsek is a poet who's my teacher in one of my poetry classes, and she read us all kinds of poems for all different poets. And she read us this one from Russell Edson, and the poem is called Ape and Coffee. Have you heard that one, Liz?
Yes, I love him.
So Ape and Coffee. Some coffee had gotten on a man's ape. The man said, "Animal, did you get on my coffee?" "No, no," whistled the ape. "The coffee got on me." You're sure you didn't spill on my coffee, said the man. Do I look like liquid, peeped the ape. Well, you sure don't look humid, said the man. But that doesn't make me a fluid, twittered the ape. Well, I don't know what the hell you are, so just stop it, cried the man. I was just sitting here reading the newspaper when you splashed coffee all over me, piped the ape. I don't care if you are a liquid, you just better stop splashing on things, cried the man. Do I look fluid to you? Take a good look, hooted the ape. If you don't stop, I'll put you in a cup, screamed the man. I'm not a fluid, screeched the ape. Stop it, screamed the man. You are frightening me. So that's super weird. And especially, when you're in college and you're just starting to write poetry, it's like, is that a poem? Or that is a poem? Like, that's what poetry can be. So it really opened up like the whole spectrum of what a poem could be and like what you could do just in writing in general. So that's, if you read this and you think that is super weird, that's good. I hope you think it's super weird because that was the whole point. So it's a little bit of Russell Edson. There's also a little bit of Gary Larson's kind of Far Side kind of stuff in there, a lot of reversals of animals and humans. And I realized as I was writing it, there's also a lot about death, which I kind of found interesting, and I didn't realize until I'd written a bunch of them, like, why do I keep writing about people dying gruesomely? So, because I'm not a gruesome person, I didn't think. So I'll read some of these. This one's called A Slip of the Tongue. A man and a woman were lying in bed. Show me your tongue, said the woman. Ah, said the man. The woman looked deep into the man's mouth. She said, and opened a magazine. What, said the man. Said the woman. Why did you say that? Asked the man. Say what? Asked the woman, not looking up from her reading. You looked in my mouth and said, he said. I did not, said the woman. Yes, replied the man, yes, you did. You looked right down my mouth and said, like something was wrong. I did nothing of the sort, Henry, the woman replied, still in her magazine. Said the man. Who's Henry? All right. This one is called Storks. When the young stork came of age, he asked his father where baby storks come from. His father coughed, nearly spilling his coffee. He set the morning paper aside and called for his wife. When his wife didn't come, he looked into his son's questioning stork eyes and began, fumbling. You see, son, when two storks fall in love, a human climbs into their tree and places an egg in their nest. This one is called The Coat Check. A coat who decided to wear a man made his way to the coat check and laid his man on the counter. I'd like to check my man, please, said the coat to the clerk. I'm sorry, said the clerk, but this is a coat check. We only check coats, not men. Well, what do you expect me to do with this? Said the coat, gesturing to the man sprawled across the countertop. I'm sorry, sir, said the clerk. You're going to have to either wear him or carry him with you. The coat thought about it, then sighed, frustrated. If you'd like, the clerk continued, we can check you in and your man can go inside. The coat shook his collar. No thanks, he said. I guess I'll just have to carry him. He swung his man over his shoulder and made his way inside. The sign above the door read, Women's Spring Jacket Fashion Show, today only. This one's called The Deer. I went on kind of an animals kick for a little while. A deer hit a man as he was driving home from work. When the police arrived to file a report so the damages could be covered by the deer's insurance company, they did their best to console the badly shaken driver. There was nothing I could do, said the deer, standing over the bloody corpse. He just ran out in front of me. The man's jagged femur was sticking out of his flesh at an odd angle. His hair was matted into the grill of the young deer's car. There was nothing I could do, the deer said again, weakly. He just ran out in front of me. Every time I read these, I'm surprised at how morbid they seem. So this one's called The Assassin. Not morbid at all. An old man hired an assassin to do his dirty work. The assassin asked the old man what he would like him to do. Who would you like me to kill? Asked the assassin. Kill, said the old man, astonished. Who said anything about killing? I'm an assassin, said the assassin. That's what I do. I kill things. The old man looked puzzled. He said. I don't have anything for you to kill. Well, said the assassin, what did you hire me for? To do my dirty work, said the old man. You know, clean the gutters, take the trash out. I have an old cedar closet that hasn't been cleaned in years. Oh, said the assassin, that's not really what I do. You're sure you don't have anything that needs killing? The old man sighed. Time, he said. This one's called A Reversal of Fortune. One day, a man who had amassed a great fortune came home to find it standing on the porch next to a small pile of duffel bags and suitcases. There was a taxi idling in the driveway, and when the man arrived, he ran up to the fortune to see what was going on. "What's all this?" the man asked, gesturing to the luggage on the porch. The fortune sighed. "I'm leaving you, Frank," it said, gathering its things. "Isn't it obvious?" "What?" cried the man, "but why?" The fortune started loading its belongings into the trunk of the idling cab. "Because, Frank," it said, "you think you can just go around using people. Well, you can't, Frank, you just can't. You can't use me, not anymore." The fortune slammed the trunk and got in the car. "Goodbye, Frank," it said, "take care of yourself." The cab drove off. The man sat on the lawn and watched as it got smaller and smaller and smaller. Then it was gone. Okay. This one's called The Tape of Silence. This is based on a true story that at a camp, I brought up the tape of silence and everybody laughed at me and said it was stupid. But I liked it, so I kept it. One night, a group of young boys decided to sneak out of their cabin while their camp counselor was sleeping. To make sure the counselor would not hear them leaving, one of the boys put a tape of silence into a cassette player and played it while they made their escape. "All right," said the boy, "the tape is playing, now we can go." But since the tape was playing, no one could hear him over the silence. "Hey," said the first boy again, "I said it's on, now we can go." But the silence was too loud, and the other boys still couldn't hear him. Suddenly there was movement from the shadows behind them. It was the counselor, wielding a large axe. "Hey," the boy yelled, "look out behind you, look out." The other boys looked at him, shaking their heads, shrugging their shoulders in confusion. "Are you deaf?" cried the boy. "He's got an axe, look out, run." But the silence was too loud. The boy ran away as the others were chopped to bits by the counselor. "That's what you get for trying to trick me," said the counselor, but no one could hear him over the silence.
Well, you know, you have an interesting mind, Simon.
Yeah, thank you, I guess, right? This one's called Killing Time. Time unlocked the door and went inside. As he reached for the light switch, he felt the icy barrel of a handgun forced against the base of his neck. An assassin moved out of the shadows. "Not another inch," said the assassin. "What's this all about?" asked Time. "Who sent you?" "That's none of your business," replied the assassin. "But if you must know, I was hired by an old man to kill you." "Kill me?" said Time, startled. "I can't be killed." "Can't be killed," said the assassin. "We'll just see about that." He fired 2 shots into the back of Time's skull. They seemed to have no effect. "See, what did I tell you?" said Time, unfazed. "I can't be killed. Without me, there would be no progress, nothing new." The assassin lowered his gun and sighed. "I suppose you're right," he said. "I'm sorry I tried to kill you." "Don't worry about it," said Time, "but maybe think twice the next time you decide to take a job that involves killing, a metaphorical representation of an abstract idea." The assassin returned to the house of the old man who had hired him and found the old man dead. "What did the old man die of?" he asked the old man's maid. The maid just shrugged her shoulders. "Time will tell," she said. All right. And this one is probably my favorite from the collection. It's a little bit less weird, but I like it. Called What the World Revolves Around. A young man and his girlfriend were shopping for clothes at the mall. The girl was rifling through some jeans on a rack as the young man stared absently at a t-shirt that read, "The world revolves around me," in bold letters around a picture of a smiling planet Earth. "You should get this one," said the young man, picking up the shirt. The girl laughed and moved on to another rack of jeans. "What are you trying to say?" she said. "Nothing," said the young man, "just that the world revolves around you. The world is you-centric." Said the girl, "that's sweet." The girl moved on to another rack. "That's the one thing we have in common," said the young man. "Both our worlds revolve around you." Said the girl, moving on. All right. I was hoping I could read, Liz, is it cool if I read a couple more traditional poems?
Sure.
All right. Last year, so that's not all the poems, but that's almost all the poems in this. So if you want a few more weird ones about death and animals, there's death and animal ones in here as well. Last year, I started 2020 with the goal of writing a book of poems a month, and I actually made it through March. They're not all great poems, but I did it. So this is just a couple from the book February. This one's called Bomb-Sniffing Cyborg Locusts. And it's about, I read a science article about how scientists were putting basically robots on bugs to control them, which is weird. Bugging bugs, scientists are reading locust minds by the swarm, binding bodies with minimal harm to find bombs. What could go wrong? Bomb-sniffing cyborg locusts created by the US Navy. This is just a start, they say, and it's smart to be first. After all, when it comes to weaponized pests, Americans are best at avoiding questions of what's next, asking could instead of should, etc. The future belongs to cyborg bugs, locust US Navy spies, special forces disguised as pollinating bees. Every flower full of poison, every field a battlefield. This is one called Karma. What goes around goes. It depends on the arc and degree from the start, where it ends and begins, but not always. Sometimes fate plays favorites. Sometimes what goes up stays up. Sometimes what goes down stays. Always degrees, the rise or the fall, the door or the wall. What goes around goes, and sometimes what comes from nowhere. And then I just have a one more that I wanted to read because it's almost spring, or actually just turned spring this last weekend. And it's a poem from the book called March, and it's a poem called Almost Spring. It's almost spring. A sudden green replaced the hills of blackened snow, as overnight the sun-built strength of dawn arrived to grow and burn. The cold dissolved into a breeze warm enough to keep the windows open morning wide, the glass panes raised for early birdsong screens. Winter is a patient close to death, waiting for that final shallow breath when the dying finally stops and tears drop dead eyes clear to cloudless skies. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. You probably can't hear the thunderous applause.
I can see the
Okay.
fingers. So
Thank you. Okay, that was, all the time I worked with Simon, I had no interest, I had no idea he was a writer, other than the thousands of articles. I didn't know he had the creative thing going on. So it was a great surprise to find that.
if you write 2,000, you can then say 1,000. So thousands. You just need more than 1,000 to say thousands.
I've written more than 1,000. Okay, next reader is Colleen Alice, who is a writer and librarian living in West Michigan, I think Grand Rapids-ish. Her fiction and poetry have appeared in a number of literary magazines. Finishing Line Press has published 2 chapbooks of her poetry. Her first novel, Skinny Vanilla Crisis, was published in July of 2020. She's a graduate of Michigan State University and Wayne State University, and a contributing editor for short fiction at Barron Magazine. Colleen Alice. There you are.
There I am.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. And I'm just going to change so I don't have to see my face so large right here. Thank you. So this is a really fun event. And when I received the news that my entry had been selected as the state winner, I was really excited. And like Simon said, I think that the team or the students who put together my book, I think they just did an amazing job. I liked all of the options that Elizabeth had sent, but this one, so the cardinal really speaks to me and is a special bird to me and to my family. So this one stood out to me the most, and I just think it's a really pretty book.
I just want to interrupt and say,
Yeah.
I told the students they did not have to put a bird on it because it was in the title, and every single cover had a bird on it. So you win.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, and so which is funny. So this is a chapbook where every poem inside features a bird in some way, big or small. And what I like about chapbooks, so this is my 3rd chapbook, what I like about them is that they are smaller. It's a little less intimidating than, say, a full collection to put together. And as I was looking through poems I'd written in the last few years, I realized I was writing a lot about birds. And I thought that's kind of funny. I'm not a bird person per se. I'm not a bird, someone who watches birds or knows a lot about birds. So I hope that at the end of in the Q&A, there aren't a lot of questions about birds because I probably won't know the answer. But I just found that they were appearing in a lot of my poems. And so I thought it would be neat to pull them together in this chapbook. So yeah, so all of that is to say, I've been writing for a while, and poetry and fiction are mainly what I focus on. And then this book, the chapbook that I wanted to do something kind of different and special for this one. And so what I did was partner with the Literacy Center of West Michigan, which is a nonprofit that works in Kent County to help adults improve their literacy skills. And it's an organization that I had volunteered for and worked for in the past. And so I am actually donating half of all the proceeds of this book toward that organization. So if anyone still wants to purchase a copy, please know that half of the proceeds are going to be a donation to the Literacy Center and the great work that they're doing. They're not doing work about birds. They're promoting literacy, but obviously, you know, as I'm sure everyone in this room is, I'm someone who lifelong reader. I've always loved to read and write. I've been writing pretty much my whole life, and it's one of the most important things in my life. And I can't imagine not being able to access that part just of my mind or my creativity, to have that outlet for poetry, because it's so important. So I thought I would pick a few poems to read from the chapbook, and each one does kind of feature a different bird, as I mentioned, big or small. So I'll tell you what the birds are so that you can be thinking about them or listening for them as I read the poems. The first bird is going to be a seagull. And then the second bird is just a generic brown songbird. The third will be a pigeon. So you can kind of be listening for those birds as I go. So the first one I'd like to share with you is called A Gull on Honeymoon. And it's a poem that I actually wrote about my daughter. A Gull on Honeymoon. My daughter begs for the beach, which is perfectly ordinary, except for the fact that she's never been to the beach. The idol of the right day hasn't yet hit this summer. Also, I'm scared. The endless high wave warnings for Lake Michigan shuck our faces from the evening news at each account of a drowning. Still, here she is, all dimples and brown barrel curls. She's holding her swimsuit, the one with pink polka dots. She's hard to turn down, so I find myself asking my body for yet another favor, that my limbs will bend and buoy in Lake Michigan for as long as my daughter wants to shriek and laugh among the waves, a gull on honeymoon with fresh water. I wrap her in my long arms, my skin sighing relief, and each time she digs her small talons into my shoulders, it's a promise we make to each other to not let go. I wound up writing quite a few poems about my daughter after she was born. She's almost 6 now, which is crazy, but those poems became my first chapbook, which is just called Induction Poems for My New Daughter. So the joke was in my family and with my friends, when I had my second child, who's a boy, my son, are you going to write, if you don't write a book of poetry about him too, he's going to feel so left out. You have to write another book of poetry about him, so he doesn't have that second child syndrome. But I have written some poems about him as well, but quite a few I started writing after my daughter was born. And so I think I'll share, so to be fair, I'll share one I wrote about him too. And what struck me as I was thinking about this poem and getting ready for today is, this is a poem I did write a few years ago, but it very well could have been written right now, because it's a poem about standing at the window and looking out the window. And it feels like that's kind of all I've done the last year. And maybe that's just also when you have small children, you do spend a lot of time just kind of sitting around or standing around. So this is a poem that kind of is grounded in reality for me, something that really happened. And all the times that I would stand holding my son as a baby, staring out the window. He doesn't let me really do that anymore because he's 3.5 and he would much rather be running around and chasing the dog than snuggling me. but I like that this poem will remind me and also him that at one point in time he did let me snuggle him and just do things like stare out the window for a really long time. And we would stare at, my house is really, the window in the kitchen looks out to my neighbor's house. So hopefully in a not creepy way, I look at my neighbor's window and their house a lot. So hopefully they don't find that too strange. But so this is a poem called Birds by the Attic Slats. Brown songbirds have pressed themselves through the attic slats by the roof of the house next door. To enter, they pull their wings against their little bodies, slipping inside the attic to brace for the coming colder months. My son and I watch from the window as the birds come and go. We point with our fingers. We touch the cold glass pane, offering to the birds our fingertips. On occasion, my son rests his head on my chest as he did the week he was born. The curls of his crown become down and feathers under my lips. He pulls his tiny bones into his round body, pressing against my exterior, like he wants to pull himself through my walls, like he wants to access an attic I am not aware I have, a place that is warm and safe and quiet and ready for the coming winter, and it's inside of me. He rests his head against me the way I have learned we all should when we have chanced upon a good place to seek warmth and safety. And this is the way I have learned we are all meant to rest against one another when we have found another human to love, if only for just one season. And probably like a lot of poets and writers, the creative work that I do is kind of based in reality, you know, things that have really happened, moments that have been true to life. But they're also not true. They're also fictionalized and things that haven't really happened. And so the last poem, the pigeon poem, as I call it, I feel a little bit, to put it this way, it's maybe the poem that's the most embarrassing for me to read, to be honest, especially because I think my mom is here and my dad. So hi, Mom and Dad. So based in reality, it happened. It didn't really happen, but it's good to share and be vulnerable. And poetry has meant a lot to me for just a really long time, and it's also nice to share it with people and other people who love poetry too. So I'll just go ahead and read it and turn a little bit red. So it's a poem called Elegy for a Pigeon. Elegy for a Pigeon. But mostly, I think back to the spring I was 16 and introduced myself for the first time to New York City. The epic climb to the top of the Empire State Building burned my thighs, but I chose to save the exposures in my disposable camera for the teal and charcoal pigeons that cooed and jutted their nets my way in a campaign to learn if I had carried with me any crumbs. I felt I understood those pigeons better than all the other two-bit tourists who elbowed me from the viewfinders on the observation deck, ready to take their turn at surveying the lovely harbor. Back home, I was in love with a boy I was sure didn't know my name. For hours, I would stare at the back of his neck in US history class. For a quarter, that morning, I had bought that boy a postcard of Our Lady Liberty and immediately tucked it inside the front cover of my diary. I'd never mail it. That was a given. Mailing a postcard to a boy who doesn't love you is like a pigeon sitting on a pier, fancying himself a swan. I think if bird breeds were chess pieces, a pigeon would be asked to be a pawn. We'd entrust them to helmet up and prepare for battle. We'd call for their sacrifice for the fact of their obvious abundance. We'd judge them ineffectual, only able to advance one space at a time. We'd lose sight of them, think that just because they are ordinary, they are not important. We would regard them as expendable, like everyone, like anyone, like I am just any girl sitting behind you studying your skin. But I believe I am one of a kind. I believe I am not someone you should take for granted. What is the right way to write a pigeon the kind of elegy it deserves? A common bird resplendent in his abundance. In the end, I'm really asking a pigeon to tell me the secret of how I could be queen. And that's it. So there are others, and they're also bird related. And if you're interested, let me know. I still have copies for sale, and I'm happy to keep supporting great organization of the Literacy Center.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Woo!
Thanks, brother.
Hey, I would have clapped for Simon, but I was spilling my wine. That's the only reason I didn't clap for Simon.
Oh, sure, Deborah.
Yeah, I always
Okay.
spill my wine. That's a really credible story.
And our final reader tonight, and then after Gemma is done, we'll have questions if people want to ask people anything. Gemma Wesolowski grew up in her native Philippines and in West Africa, where her father worked. She now lives in Kalamazoo with her 2 sons. When she's not busy doing accounting and payroll from home, so exciting, she spends her time reading, gardening, and baking. Her work has most recently appeared in Imagine This, an Art Prize anthology, and she has also read at our humor reading that we had a couple of years ago. So, Gemma Wesolowski.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Elizabeth, for that great introduction. And thank you for the rendering of this beautiful book by the Celery City's Chapbooks. I realize that not everyone will be familiar with the word widow, so I want to begin by reading the title poem, Ouido, by way of explanation. Widow. The word widow in my language is pronounced widow, but means to play an instrument by ear. I am now a widow. I am widowing, feeling things through. The smooth keys are cold to my fingers. Trying to play a song without sheet music, I keep sounding the wrong notes over and over. It is a searching more than a playing, dreaming of an impossible perfect pitch. Most of the poems in this book were written shortly after my husband passed away a year ago. The next poem is called How to Be Your Own Grief Counselor. Offer yourself some tea. Make sure the tissue box is handy but discreet. Ask how you are feeling today. This may lead to details for further discussion, or it may stop at small talk. Give yourself as much time as you need to anchor yourself. There's no telling how big the swells are going to be. You know how unintelligible you are when you ugly cry. Be gentle. Inch your way to the difficult questions. On a scale of 1 to the Grand Canyon, how big does the void feel? Now that you've lost all refuge in things that used to make you happy, how do you get out of bed in the morning? Do you get out of bed every morning? Do you think things are going to get better? Are you strong enough to start over? Realize as you are asking that you don't have any answers either. You are officially the worst shrink on the planet. And not just because you can't prescribe any drugs or have any qualifications whatsoever. However, it is likely that no one has any answers at all. Look at the clock and schedule your next appointment. The next 2 poems I'd like to read side by side because they sort of belong together. I think they speak about grief as a sense of place. The first one is called My Hand as a Map. Where are you from? In mitten-shaped Michigan, people hold up their left hand and point to the location on the hand as if it were a map. I am by the wrist, slightly to the right of the pisiform bone. The Philippines looks like a farmer planting rice. My parents are from the brow. I grew up inside the mouth. I went to university at the foot of a mountain, shaped like a woman's fine sleep. But before that, my family lived in Nigeria. whose coast is a fractal of waves and shores. This is where I'm from. This is my heart's topography. Where are you from? I've never been there before. Grief is a country, although it seems more like an ocean, the way it can engulf and drown. I came to it like I came to this country, landed on a plane after a long flight, into unfamiliar smells and unfamiliar trees. I remember watching a movie at the theater and being momentarily confused when the lights turned on and all around me were blonde heads. I am very much a stranger in grief. I am the wrong color and my accent is odd. But most of all, because I resist its ways. I don't belong here. I arrived against my will. When you love someone, there is always a longing. When you lose that love, the longing is stronger. You are bereft, which is a violent word. You are riven, torn, split apart. I don't want to acclimate to grief. I don't intend to ever call it home. But I am making the new immigrant's mistake. I don't understand yet how a day plus another day eventually becomes a life. I will grow old here whether I want to or not. One day I will be here long enough to start a garden. I will own books here. I will recreate meals with its foreign ingredients. They won't taste exactly as I remember, but they will have to do. Eventually, I will become a citizen of grief, and I will be allowed to visit my former country. But I will always have to come back home. I live here now. Grief is my country. It may even someday grow to love it as mine. When I was considering the placement of the poems in the book, given the gravity of the theme, I wanted to end on a note of hope. So I'll end my reading with the last two poems in the book. Inventory. In spring, I go through the garden to cut down the dead stalks of the past year and take inventory of what survived the cold. The greening at the base of detritus is a joy to see. Here, unrecognizable yet as itself, is the anemone, or hosta, or hochera, or astobi, coming back to life. And here, where the lavender should be, is the bone-white skull of its skeleton. I have planted many things that did not come to be. Whatever survived seemed to do so by grace. It takes some time to learn that primal thing about will and nature, something the garden already knows by heart. One survives only by becoming oneself.
Brava.
Sorry, this last one. After everything, what an act of bravery it is to love in this life. Imagine being set loose in a field of wildflowers, realizing each flower can turn into a dagger at any time, and running into the field with undiminished abandon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Can I talk about phrenology for a minute?
Sure,
Okay.
absolutely.
How many years ago was that?
I think it was the first time I submitted to Celery Chapbook.
Yeah.
So that would have been
I don't know.
2 years ago. 2 years ago.
Okay. Anyway, so she submitted a manuscript called Phrenology, which I had to look up. It's the study of lighthouses. It didn't win. It had a lot of promise, but there were some problems with it. So Gemma and I had a cup of coffee and we sat and I told her what I thought, because I'm, pretty blunt. And then when this manuscript came through, I didn't know it was hers. I just was reading it going like, wow, this is great. Oh my God, it's Gemma. I felt like this is our mission. This is what we're supposed to do. So you did a great job on this book.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
It was so good of you to remind me to write what I needed to. So thank you.
My pleasure. Okay, so are there any questions for any of our readers? I, of course, have no way of knowing. I guess
Where-
would a person
where-
just, go ahead, Sydney,
Where are the books available?
at my house,
Okay, okay,
but they're going to be at Michigan News also.
okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
You look pretty comfy there. You're staying on the screen for a long time. Look sharp.
I'm interested in what people's writing process is and if you've noticed that it's changed during this pandemic.
Well, the most, I think that the first thing that changed immediately for me is the isolation. So as I was writing this book, I was also in the midst of just so much alone time. I didn't know what to do with it. And it was cathartic to be able to write during this time because there was so much silence. And for me, I didn't realize it at the time, but it's crucial to the creative process for me. I need to be able to be still to write. So that's what's changed majorly. I think that moving forward, I will seek the moments when I can be quiet to write.
Mhm.
I thought it was,
Colleen? Oh,
oh,
go
sorry.
ahead. Go
Uh,
ahead, Simon.
I was just gonna say, I thought it was interesting. I was trying to do that book a month thing last year. So I was writing like every day, even just forcing whatever out because I wanted to hit this quota I'd set for myself. And so the first January went fine. February, actually everything was better. But then you can see by that point, I was running out of things to write about. So I was like trying to come up with themes. So I did. So I was going in a very specific direction for about half the month. And you can almost see when the coronavirus shutdown started, because slowly I broke from, that theme, and everything was about being stuck inside or, work closing down or everybody's scared. And it was just interesting to see like how naturally, without trying, like the tone, my mental state, like was a certain way without me even realizing it, especially looking back at it. But generally I'm just all over the place. Usually lines pop in and I scribble them on something in the morning when I'm still asleep or when I get out of the shower, and then I work on them later maybe, or just leave them in a pile somewhere.
Well, you set yourself kind of a huge goal with a book a month,
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah.
just saying.
I'm a believer in to write good stuff, you have to write a lot of stuff. So
Mhm.
I'm okay if there's like 100 poems that are garbage if I get 2 or 3 really good ones. So you just have to write a lot of them, and just by statistics, you'll get a few good ones.
Actually, I agree with you completely. Where did Colleen go?
Oh, I'm here. Sorry. I agree with those things. And I think for me, it wasn't so much, well, it's such a paradox, right? Because suddenly there was all this time, but yet no time to write, busy with other things. And for me, it was really the lack of life losing all sense of balance. And that kind of puts you in a strange headspace. But certainly I tried to write, and I would kind of push myself too, because I know you always feel better. Same with going for a run. You don't really want to go, but you're old enough to know that you'll feel great for the rest of the day if you commit to that and do it. So I tried to, but I have been working on a novel during the pandemic, and I hit a point where it's just a very lighthearted and fun. And right around last summer with all the Black Lives Matter protests and just the heaviness, I put it away. I didn't care about it anymore at all. It all felt so silly and kind of dumb. So I may just burn that one. Although it's like a Word document, so you don't actually get to, unless I want to print it and waste paper and ink, you don't actually get the satisfaction of burning it. You just like delete. But I found that, poetry was a better fit for this time. Just shorter, like not lower stakes, but shorter projects than something longer, something you could do in a few days versus a much longer period of time. So
I have to tell Simon about a plaque that we had up on the wall at our cabins. And it showed a deer driving a car with hunters strapped over the bumper.
Yeah. That's
From
like
the
a Far
19
Side. Did you ever read Far Side? Gary Larson?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's stuck in my head or something, maybe that kind of thing.
Anyone else? I'm not going to torture us with silence. So if,
I have a question.
yes, Margaret, you may ask a question.
Hi, Simon.
Hi.
It's been a long time. We used to work together at the Gazette ever
Yeah.
so briefly. And I'm just curious, do you still do any kind of journalistic type writing these days, or what kind of other things do you do beside poetry?
Yeah, so I work at KCC, Cal Community College, in the marketing department, and I write like all our press releases. So it's basically like writing journalism stuff. It's just for a college instead of a city. But we have like magazines and stuff. So I wrote like 3 giant features last month for the magazine, and I'm constantly doing stuff. I'm also teaching journalism classes there, so I get a fair amount of stay up to date on things, and yeah, I do a lot of writing.
Cool, that's great. Glad to hear it. It was nice
Good
to
to see you.
appear on the same page of Encore with you.
Yeah, that was awesome.
All over here.
Well, okay. We don't have anything else planned that I could promote except for the kids contest. We're hoping to have a reading as we usually do during the Doodah parade time, but who knows if that's going to happen. My whole thing is just visit the website, and that's how you'll find out what's happening with us for sure. And it was great to have all 3 of you read. I loved your books. I knew how to pronounce Ouido the minute I saw it. So I thought it was easy. So I'm glad that you went with it just as that as a title. Okay, so if no one has anything else, our Friends of Poetry people all have their assignments. Sure they do. Okay, so we'll see you around in this life. We'll get together, Gemma, after this bullshit is over.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Readers.
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you.
There's Kelly Frost. Okay,
Fantastic reading, everybody.
Yeah,
that was good.
Hi, Kelly.
Hi, Martha.
Haven't seen you in a long time.
Yeah, I know. It's so good to see you.
Really wonderful job. Thank you so much, readers. Your books are fantastic.
I know.
They are.
Mhm.
Very well done.
Okay, I'm going now.
Colleen.
Bye-bye.
Lynn, you're looking so windblown.
I am. I was moving furniture today.